gonna work.
The truth is out there. Never stop looking. Never be sheep. Always disrupt. We are the ungovernable. We are the truth seekers. We are Sasquatchers.
And that is our new intro video, trying to beef up our YouTube. I am Andrew, as always, here with John, and tonight we have what I think will be a pretty special episode. Joining us tonight is Doug Lockhart, and Doug is one of the driving forces behind our Sasquatch hunt or Bigfoot camp, and we'll get into that a little bit, but first, we'll go ahead and we'll give Doug an opportunity to introduce himself to everybody.
Hi, everybody. My name is Doug Lockhart. I created the Bigfoot group in southwestern PA. It's the fact that I saw one. And I'm not BSing. I actually did see one September 8th of 2011, and it was 25 yards in front of me. And that's why I created the group, just to let everybody know they are no myth, they are no legend, they are breathing animals just like you and I. That's why I created the group, just to spread the word, and if people want to believe, that's up to them. If they don't want to believe, that's up to them as well.
So you said that it was 25 yards away from you. That's pretty close. How did you encounter it? What's the kind of the backstory there exactly? Were you hunting, or how did you come across one, especially so close?
Well, I used to be a Pennsylvania State Constable for about 22 years. And I was after a guy off of Skyline Drive, actually right across, not even a couple hundred yards across the state line into West Virginia. And I never did get him. So what had transpired was I went up there for approximately about a month, one day a week. And on the last time that I went up there, I didn't get him, so I said, well, that's that. I'm done trying. So I was on my way back on Skyline Drive towards Mud Pike, which takes you down to 857 to a little town called Haydentown outside of Fairchance, PA. And I came around a curve and started down a hill, and I noticed, a whole bunch of Amish trailers on the left and everything every time I would go up there. And this guy was out in the middle of the road, and I was driving a silver four-door Crown Victoria with a spotlight, push bar on the front. He's jumping up and down. He has his yellow vest on, and he's jumping up and down. And I went flying down towards him, and he jumped in the car with me, and he's like, he was Spanish, and he said, "Can you go up the road? We have a problem." He thought I was the police. So, but I had all my duty gear, gun, and everything, taser. So I went up the road, a little tram road, and I went up there, and they had 4 guys or 5 guys on top of this one guy that was still in copper off of a spool on a truck. And I pulled up, and the workers, I told them to get off of him, and this guy was like 7 foot tall, and I mean, this guy was immense. And I told him, you better comply, or else, I'm gonna have to take action against you, and this and that. And he rolled over and he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you all." Well, that was that. I pulled out my taser and I tased him, and then we handcuffed him, and then waited for the state police to come. And that's how all this came about. They had problems and issues before up there, but they said never like this. So this was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I guess the workers came in a little bit early, and they caught him stealing his copper wire. He had his pickup truck with a torch, and he was just pulling the copper down and cutting it, then throw it in the back of his pickup. And then he pulled a little bit more down, cut it, throw it in the back of his pickup. And so that's how he got caught, and that's how I got the job. Because they offered it to me, and they said, you can be the supervisor up here if you choose, and if you want a job, we'll give it to you, guarding up here. So that's how all this transpired.
So that's how you wound up in the area. So did you just kind of come across the Sasquatch, just kind of on your day to day, or were you in the middle of a an incident where you were tracking somebody down?
All that transpired. So they hired me and they asked me, can you come up this evening, the same day? And I'm like, yeah. They said, we need you to do night shift, if that's all right. I said, so I went up and I got up there a little bit early. I started at 7. And I had to work up there 2 weeks by myself. And so I was, a little bit apprehensive about being by myself, but, I had security with me. And so I went up and, they just sit here in the parking lot, don't move. You don't have to go out to any of the windmills. We don't have any more copper. The spool of copper is ruined. So we have to order another spool of copper, which back then it was worth $80,000. Since I got arrested and he ruined the whole wire, he said we just can't use it. So anyway, I get up there and it's a little bit early. It's like 20 till 7. They told me just sit here in the parking lot, watch the Connex trailers with their tools in it, watch the office trailers. They had computers and everything else in there. I said, okay. So the first night I was up there, nothing really happened. I mean, I heard a couple sounds, but I really didn't pay much attention. The second night I was up there, I heard a couple like wood knocks, and I'm wondering what in the heck is that? And then the third night I was up there, I'm sitting in my car and I'm looking down at my phone, and right up in front of me, there's like a telephone pole with a piece of plywood on it. And it's an 8-foot piece of plywood attached to this telephone pole. And then the office trailers were like 22 to 23 feet away from that pole. And there were 6 of them. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my phone. And I happen to look up and I'm looking around. And I look back down at my phone. And then I look back up and I see something fly in the halogen street light. I can see it and it's coming towards my car. I'm like, what the heck is that? And then all of a sudden, boom, right on the roof of my car. I jumped out of my car and it bounced off my car and then landed on my trunk. I jumped out of my car. I have my flashlight out and I'm looking. And I seen this rock. It was about that big. And it bounced off my car and then bounced up in the air and then bounced down on my trunk. I went over and I picked this rock up and I said, you throw another rock at my car, I said, we're going to have a big problem. Just dead silence. Dead silence. And the closest house is probably about maybe almost a mile and a half up the road. There's no other houses around. So, I was pretty mad. So I stayed up the rest of the night. Nothing else happened. So, fourth night, nothing really transpired. The fifth night, I heard a scream, a high-pitched scream, like a woman that was being, abducted. Like the scream, like what? I mean, wow! It went up real high, and then it come down real low, and then just stopped. And then one hair I have, it stood up on the back of my neck, and I'm like, what in the hell is that? And I never heard that sound before in my life. So I was on edge. I mean, I was really on edge. I didn't know what to say. So that's all that transpired that night. So then a couple nights went by, nothing. Then on, I don't know, the eighth night, something like that. It's been a while, but I kept on hearing tree knocks behind me, and then I would hear tree knocks down over the hollow, Quebec Run area. It was down like in the valley. I'd hear a tree knock behind me, and then I would hear a tree knock down in Quebec Hollow, and then would start hearing this whoop, whoop, and I'm like, what is going on here? I was like, I wasn't petrified, but I was like really on edge. So, this went on, and so then after that, kind of like died down a little bit, and then on like the 10th night, I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot, and then to my left is like a wood line, and then the road goes back to my left, and it goes back towards the windmills. And to my right is just the parking lot with all the office trailers, and then behind me was the Connex trailers to my left. So I'm just sitting there, and I hear this tree snap. I mean, it just like snapped. Crack. I looked over to my left, and I got my mag light out, and I'm shining it, and I caught two red eyes. It looked at the mag light, and then blinked, and then it was gone. But these eyes were like red. I mean, red. And I'm like, what in the heck has red eyes when you hit it with a light? And I try to Google it, and there's some bird over in Africa or something. But nothing like around our general area, PA. And at least I couldn't find anything. So, just a couple other things, a couple nights later. Well, then I got to hire some people on. John Ross, and a couple other constables. They did weekend work for me. And then John Ross and Don Ross, they did night shift with me. So, Don, I didn't tell him what was going on, but Don lives off of Hopwood Cool Spring Road, up probably about a mile up in the woods, and he's very close to Laurel Caverns. And, I didn't say anything to him what was going on, nothing. So what we started doing, what they wanted us to do was go do rounds, go through windmills 1 through 16, and come back out of the parking lot and go up to other windmills. There was like 3 windmills to the right of us, and then windmills on Mud Pike, and and go out to the substation out on Kirby Road, which is about, I'd say, about 8 miles.
Okay.
So I said, I showed Don what to do. He rode with me when he got up there. We get back, and I said, "You want to go for a round? You want me to do it?" He's like, "You can go. Just, I said, "Okay." So I went back, windmills 1 through 16, come back down, checked in with them, went up to the other 3 windmills, went down to Mud Pike, then I went out to the substation because there was copper out there also. I get out to the substation and we have 2-way radios, and Don hollers at me on the radio. He says, "Hey, Doug, Doug." And I'm like, "Yeah, Don." He's like, can you get back here, please? And Don, he's 6'3", 6'4". He's a big guy. I said, "Are you all right?" And he's like, just get back here. He was stuttering while he was talking. So I go flying back there, and I come flying into the parking lot, and he's sitting in his pickup truck, and he's looking at me, and then he's looking at the road. He said, "Did you just come from that way?" And I said, "Well, you saw me." And he said, I don't know what's going on here. I said, "What happened, Don? Are you okay?" He looked white as a ghost. He said, "Come on over here with me." He said, "Get out of the car." So I got out of the car and we walked over, and there's in between the first office trailer and the second office trailer, there was porta-johns. But between the 5th office trailer and the 6th office trailer, there was porta-johns also. So he went between number 5 office trailer and number 6 to the porta-johns. And he went to the very end one by Skyline Drive. So, and that night, it was June. That night, there was like a mist. It didn't rain, but there was like a mist. So, we walk over. I walk all the way over there with him, and I'm like, "Don, what are you doing?" And he's like, just come with me." I walk over, and he's like, "Can you reach the top of that porta-john?" I said, "What's this all about?" He said, "Well, I tell you what." He said, "I'm like 260, 270. And he said, "You see how big I am?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I went in this porta-john." And he said, "I'm sitting there." And he said, all of a sudden, he said, this porta-john was pulled over while I'm sitting in it. He said it was pulled over, and he said then flung back, and it flung back into the other porta-john. Bang. And he's like, "Well, that's why I was asking you." And he said, "Okay, Doug." That's what he said. He thought it was me doing it. I said, "Don, I can't even reach the top of that porta-john." I said, "There's no lip on it, no anything." So he bent down and he put his hands in the cup, and he said, "Get up there." So I put my foot in there, and I got up, and I have my phone and got my flashlight out, and I'm leaning on the porta-john with my left arm with my flashlight. I'm like, I took a picture. And this is on my old phone. I have it still, but the screen went. So when I took a picture, and I said, "Don," I said, "I don't know what this is up here." I said, "But I'm going to get down and I'm going to show you." I said, "It looks like a huge handprint." So I jumped down and I showed him, and he's like, "That sure looks like a handprint to me." It looked like this thing just put its hand on top of the porta-john and just like pulled it over, then flung it back. And I mean, this handprint was, I mean, my hands aren't big, but this thing was just massive. And he just shook his head, and he's like, "I don't know what's going on here." So I told him what was going on. I said, "Don," I said, "I'm hearing whoops. I'm hearing screams down in Quebec Hollow, down here in the valley. I'm hearing these tree knocks. Something's banging on a tree." I said, I saw red eyes with my mag light. I said, "I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to get spooked or whatever." And he just looked at me, and he's like, Screams, huh? I said, yeah, Don, screams. And he's like, what kind of screams? Real high pitch screams, like goes up real high and comes down real quick. And he's like, you know where I live? I said, yeah. He's like, I've heard. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, they go up real high and they come down real quick. And I said, yep. I said, that's the exact same scream that I heard. And he's like, yeah. He said, what do you think it is? I says, I have no idea. And he said, I've heard those, he said they call them tree knocks, wood knocks. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's Bigfoot. I said, oh, get out of here, Bigfoot. And he's like, I never saw one. He said, but everything you're telling me, he said, I hear it up by my house. I said, okay, whatever. So that night we stayed in one place together. And I told him, I said, I think it'd be safer if we just stick together. You face your car this way, I'll face my car this way, and we'll just BS back and forth. So we did that. And then we worked till morning. Nothing else transpired. So we worked till morning. Then the next night we came up. And he would stay in the parking lot, and I would go do the first round. And I came back, and I said, anything happen? He's like, nope, all quiet. I'm like, okay. As soon as he would leave, and I'm not lying. I mean, I am not lying when I say this. As soon as he would leave, within 5 minutes, all hell would break loose. I'd start hearing tree knocks, I'd hear whoops, I'd hear screams, and I'm like, I'm getting like real uncomfortable. I mean, real uncomfortable. Well, I got on the radio, I said, hey, Don, get back here. So he comes pulling in, and I said, Don, I'm hearing all these screams, these wood knocks again. He's like, really? I said, yeah. I said, do you mind if you sit here with me? He's like, nope. He said, sit here again. So, nothing happened. When he would come back, and my right hand to the Lord. He'd come back, and nothing would happen. It's only when he would leave. So, we finished out the night, and the next night, we're sitting there, and him and I are conversing back and forth, and he looks at me, and he's like, do you smell that? I said, ooh, yeah, now I do. It was like a real pungent, like a landfill in the summertime. And I mean, just a mixture of stuff, and it just stunk. Now, we're both facing towards the road. There's a mound of dirt behind us. So I'm sitting in my car, and I happen to look up the rearview mirror, and I look up, and I see a head with like hair, like coming out of it, like strings of hair. I see shoulders, and I see arms, and it's back behind this dirt pile, and it's standing up. I said, hey, Don, I said, look in your mirror. I said, right behind the dirt pile, tell me what you see. He had to bend down. He looked in his mirror, and then he moved his mirror. And he's like, I see what you're seeing. He said, I see a head, I see shoulders and arms. I said, yeah. I thought it was somebody screwing with us. Well, from that dirt pile, there's a field behind there. And the wood line goes to maybe I'd say 50 yards, maybe 75 at the most. I said, Don, on a count of three, I'm jumping out of this car, got drawn, and I said, I'm gone. And he's like, all right. So I told him 1, 2, 3. I jumped out of the car, and I ran up over that dirt pile as fast as I could go. And it was a pretty high dirt pile. And that thing was still there. As soon as I got out of the car, I seen it drop down. And I ran up on top of that dirt pile. I I get up on top of that dirt pile with my flashlight and I'm looking. There's nothing. Nothing. I saw the top of its head go down, behind the dirt pile. So if that thing's that quick to run, 50, 75 yards, by the time I had to run like maybe 20 feet, 30 feet, and up the dirt pile, I'd say it's a pretty quick thing. But people say from what I heard, they can run up to like 50 miles an hour on all fours. 50 mile an hour, I'm sure you could do, within 50 yards, 75 yards, you could be in a woodline. So all this weird stuff just kept on transpiring, and Don had a rock thrown in his car when I left one night. I got back, and he's like, I had a rock thrown in my car. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So September 8th, 2011, I'm sitting in my car. I'm just looking around. It's 2:30 in the morning. It's quiet. So I'm just sitting there, and then I look up, and I'm looking around. I look back down at my phone. Then I look back up, and the telephone pole, like I said, is about 25, 30 yards at the most. It was right in front of me with halogen street light, then the 8-foot piece of plywood. At the bottom of the pole, I'm looking, and there's this black round object at the bottom of this pole. And I'm looking, and I'm like, that wasn't there before. And I'm looking. This thing's like charcoal black. I'm looking. It didn't move, so I was like, that's an animal. I thought it was. So I look back down on my phone. I look back up, and it's gone. I'm like, okay. Look back down on my phone. 5 seconds later, I look back up. My right hand is gone. Underneath the light was this big black blob. And I was like, what in the hell is that? And I'm looking. Well, that blob stood up. When that blob stood up, it stood up. It stood up. And there's a peg on the side of the pole for like the workers, like if they're in a basket, they can get up the pole.
Right.
It's at least 8 foot high off the ground. And this thing, when it stood up, it was right next to that peg. I remember it. And its head was about, I'd say, maybe a little bit higher than that peg, the top of its head. And this thing was immense. Like I did a podcast with Mike Scott. This thing was just broad-shouldered. Just immense. Jet black in color, short, shiny hair, jet black, cone-shaped head. Its arms hung down past its knees, its hands did. And it stood there and looked at me, and I caught the whole frontal. Just like this light right here. This would be the halogen light. This would be Bigfoot. I could see its face, and I could just see everything. And I looked, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I am not seeing what I'm seeing right now. This thing looked at me through my car window for about 3 seconds. Took a step, turned sideways, took a step, stopped, and looked back at me. Right? And then 4 steps between that telephone pole and the first office trailer. It was behind the first office trailer with 4 steps. Me being the person that I am, being a constable for so many years, I jump out of the car like a moron. I run over to the mag light, my weapon out, and I lit it up, and all I could see was a black silhouette. I could see like a vague outline of this thing. And my mag light was a D cell, C cell, and it had 3 C cell batteries in it. and it was right. That was back in 2011. And I yelled at it. I went, "Hey!" like that. It just walked away. And yeah, after that, I was like, I just stood there in awe, like this. I just put my weapon away and put my flashlight away, and I put my hands up in the air, and I said, "Okay." So I went back to the car, got on the radio, and Dawn came. I told him what happened. He was like, "Really?" I said, "Right hand to God, right hand to the Lord." So that's just what happened. I'm shaking, and so nothing happened the rest of the night. So I called. I got home about 15, 20 after 7 that morning. I got online and I typed in Bigfoot researchers near Uniontown, PA, and Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society come up. So I put in where I had my sighting, and within 30 seconds, my phone rang because I put my phone number in there. And it was Eric Altman. And Eric's like, "Doug." I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Eric Altman, PBS." He said, "Where did you have this sighting?" So I told him. He said, "Do you mind if we come up there?" I said, "Nope." I said, "Come up." So they came up that same night, same day. They come up that night. And they had probably about 20 people, 18 people, 20 people. Well, they had 4 groups of 3, split up. North, south, east, and west. They were gone for about a good 2 hours. All of them came back, and they had radios. All of them come back. So, well, we come to the conclusion, Doug, that you don't have 1 here, you have 3. And it's probably, yeah, he said it's probably a family. I said, just great. I said, I don't want to be here. Eric looked at me, and he's like, "Well, that had to be in the mail that showed itself to you." And he said, from my realization of stuff, being this line of work, this field of work, he said, "It probably won't bother you again because you didn't leave. You didn't run." I said, "Well, I ran after it." And he's like, "You did?" And I said, "Yeah." He didn't say anything. So, I told him about the high-pitched screams. He said, "Well, that's female that screams." And he said, "You probably saw the juvenile on that dirt pile." He said, "Because they had like frayed hair sticking up." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "The male showed itself to you, and you didn't leave." But they come to the conclusion. They did call blasting. They got callbacks. They were like a mile away from each other, north, east, and west. And within 5 seconds to 10 seconds, they would get a call in their area from the first team. And then the second team, which was east or whatever, they would get a call within 30 seconds. And they said, "There's no way that this thing can run a mile or so, in 30 seconds and do a scream or whatever and then run back." So that's the conclusion they said. But Eric, he did a interview with Small Town Monsters as well as I did. And he said, on Small Town Monsters, he said, "That is the most active place that I've ever been to." He said, "It's up there in Deadwoodville farming. He said, Doug had his encounter. And he said, that is the most active place that I've been to. And I'm here to tell you, I was not prepared for this. I was taken off guard. I was just in astonishment of what I saw. And I tell you, there is really juvenile. And once you smell one, you don't forget that smell. So if you're ever out in the woods and you get this real pungent, nasty smell, there's one around you. And
That's one thing that everybody always generally kind of agrees. That it's accompanied by this smell that you just kind of never forget.
No, you don't. You don't. I mean, this smell was. I mean, when it hit you, it was worse than the skunk. When it hit you, I mean, it hit you. And I know I won't forget it. I've smelled it out the woods a couple times. You know, I'm at home. I know there's one around because I can smell that smell. So it's one thing you won't forget.
Right. Did you have any other experiences after that, or was it accurate in the sense that when you predicted it wouldn't show itself to you anymore because you didn't flee? Was that kind of what actually happened then? Did your experiences like cease?
That's exactly. Eric and PBS, they came up, and the next night after that, you could hear a pin drop. I know they were around. You could just feel it. But they did whoops. They did call blasting. Nothing. They would not answer back. Nothing. But, you just get that inkling that something was around you. And, I knew they were around. But they just didn't want to cooperate and say anything back to you. Yeah.
Right.
Transpired after that. It was, you could hear the pin drop every night I went back up there. Nothing transpired. Nothing.
So something like that would obviously have a lasting impression on you. Clearly, you have continued to kind of do your own research, at least at the level that you are able to.
Right.
Are you able to, discuss any of that? Some of your excursions that you've been on, hikes or anything. Have you found any other hotbed activity areas?
Well, not necessarily. Not bad. It seems like when you go in, especially up in the mountains, like above Hotwood, there's all kind of X structures up there, and you walk up to these X structures. And if you see an X out in the woods, and you walk up to it, and you look at it, these trees are like huge, and they're like 30 feet tall. There's no possible way a man could grab this 30-foot tree that's 10 inches round, just a big tree, and drag it over there. But if you look at the bottom, if you happen to see an X out there, you look at the bottom of the tree to see if there's any roots, to see if those trees fell together to make an X. I can guarantee you, 99% of the time, those were placed there. Unless there's roots at the bottom of that tree where it fell and then the other tree fell to make an X. But look to see if there's roots. If there's no roots, then they were right there. I see like a lot of tree bends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tree bend. I had another experience, actually two. I was like 12. I was riding my dirt bike back behind Republic PA, back behind this building they called the PA Grocers Association. And I come up to this slate dump, and the trail went straight, and the trail went left, and then the slate dump was to my right. Well, I'm sitting there, and I right at this little crossroads, and I shut my bike off. This other trail to my left had like a dip, and then it went up like this. And I happen to look, and I'm looking underneath like this. There was a tree there, but I see this big black moth. And I'm looking, and I'm like, what is that? And all of a sudden, it just jumped up, and it took off. I could hear it running. And then when it ran down through the time, and then it was gone. And it was on two legs. It wasn't a bear. I mean, the way this thing was moving, I had no idea what it was. I started my bike up, and I went back the other way, and I took off. And that was my very, very first experience. Then my second experience was with about 5 or 6 friends of mine. We went down to the witching well in Lawrenceville, and we walked down to the wishing well, and we almost got right at the bottom, and all of a sudden, all of us heard this splash, this whoosh, and then boom, there's a bridge that goes across. Well, we all had flashlights, so we walked up on this bridge, and we see this huge, I mean, huge, because of the water. When it jumped up on the bridge, it like splattered water everywhere. But you can see the outline of a foot. And I'm like, what is this? There was only one, and it was in the middle of the bridge, and there was another one, but it was off the bridge. It was on concrete. And that was like 6 or 8 feet. And we had no idea what it was. And it was Bigfoot. There was fish down in that little pond, and it was in there probably drinking or trying to get something to eat. And it heard us, then jumped up on top of the bridge and took off. And it was a footprint. I mean, you could clearly see that it was a footprint. And then after I had my sighting up at the windmill farm in Farmington, PA, I took my daughter with me, and we went down in Quebec Rut. And we're walking down the path, and I stopped. And I'm looking around, and my daughter's like, "What's wrong, Dad?" She's 9 years old at the time. I said, "I don't know." I said, I got a feeling. And I'm looking around. I look down this tram road, and there's a tree, has a Y. And I look down, and it was pretty far down there, but I looked down there, and the wind wasn't blowing that day. And I look down, and I see a shoulder, an arm, and then a head right in the Y of that tree. And it's going like this. It's rocking back and forth. And mind you, there is no wind that day. It's in the middle of summertime, and no wind, no nothing. And up on top, I'd say it was way off in the distance. I heard a big, a big, loud, high-pitched scream again. Kaylee, she got behind me. She's like, "What was that?" So that was, I guess, a female Sasquatch, a Bigfoot. But this thing, I pointed with my finger, and I said, "Kaylee, look down the end of my finger. You see that tree that has a Y in it?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "You see that thing swaying back and forth and stopping?" She's like, "I see it." It was a Bigfoot standing there, and it was swaying like this, and it would stop. You can clearly see the shoulder, the arm, and then you can see the head and the Y of the tree. And so we just turned around and we walked back up the path. She wanted to leave. She got scared. So I said, "Okay, let's go." But I left a whole bunch of stuff right there. Like a whole bunch of food, apples, oranges, bananas. And I went back down the next day. All of them were gone. Everything, I mean, anything could have picked it up, but all of them were gone. So, I mean, I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together here.
Right, yeah.
What I saw and she saw, we saw an arm, a shoulder, and then a head in between that Y and that tree. So, yeah, I mean, that's about the only other encounters I've ever had.
I have a question for you real quick. Since you have seen these things pretty close and, Have you seen that video that's making the rounds right now on social media where there's almost, to me, almost like it looked like a hooded figure, and very much like the jet black description, like you described the male Sasquatch that you encountered, but there's crime scene tape, and there's a tree, and it picks this tree up, and everybody's estimating this tree to be like 530 pounds, and he picks it up and he just starts like cracking it against this other tree. And I've been seeing this for about a week. A buddy of mine had sent it. It was on TikTok, but it's been popping up in all of the Facebook groups and whatnot. And the face to me almost looks too human, but having never experienced anything, like if this was a hoax of any kind, it's a really well done one, because you do kind of get a look at the head, and it very obviously is then picking up this tree and kind of smashing it and breaking it off of this other tree that absolutely no human could do without trickery. And as far as videos go, I'm not so much sold on the appearance of the Sasquatch in it, but rather what you see him do, I think is kind of jarring. Like I don't see how within the realm of this video, like a regular person would be able to do that. Have you seen that video?
I haven't, but I saw a video. Somebody posted it in my group, and it was supposed to be a Sasquatch that was supposed to just be a Sasquatch, but it was like hiding behind like this tree. It was like a piece of tree broke this way, then a piece of tree this way. There's like all kind of like jaggers or whatever in between it. But it was just like staying right behind this tree. But I looked at it, and the more I looked at it, it looked like a ghillie suit to me. I mean, that's my assumption. Everybody has their own assumptions, their own opinions. But, you know, I don't know. They said that one's floating, you know, it's floating out there in the internet too, but
It
that's
seems
going
like the ghillie suit is definitely kind of a go-to for video hoaxers and TikTokers, and like again, the Colorado Bigfoot that a couple of weeks ago kind of made the rounds. Kind of was, in my opinion, pretty clearly somebody in a ghillie suit walking on the mountainside. But doesn't it doesn't it kind of lead credence, in your opinion, to the Patterson Gimlin film that all these years later we still can't replicate with the technology that we have and the access to all of the things that we have access to as regular people? There is no video as conclusive and decisive as the Patterson Gimlin film. Where do you stand on that film? I know like a lot of people have tried to discredit it. Myself, I scientifically I don't see any way to discredit it. So that, to me, that's still the kind of end all be all of Bigfoot evidence. But I'm curious what your opinion is.
well, I can tell you one thing. I watched that video, even though it's with an 8 millimeter camera film. I've watched it, and I mean they pointed out like leg muscles, thigh muscles, and nobody in a suit, you're not going to be able to see those muscles in its leg. Then
Absolutely.
it said it looked like it had like a hernia. Excuse me, like a hernia, I believe, on its leg or some type of like a ball or something. But you watch that thing walk, and just the strides, just taking the walk, the strides, and then you look at the leg, like in slow motion. And there's a guy on YouTube, and he is really good. Thinker Thunker. You send him a video, and he will dive into that video and tell you yay or nay if it's real. And I think he did the Patterson Gilman film, and I think he's the one that pointed out. He said, "Look at the thigh muscles. Look at the leg muscles." He said, "Are you going to find that in a suit?" He said, "No."
Yeah. Not in
Just,
suits that in the '60s for sure.
right.
You compare the Patterson Gimlin film to Planet of the Apes, which was a big budget Hollywood blockbuster with all of the money available to it at the time, and those apes look nothing close to what you see in that film. So, I mean, there's skeptics, there's critics, and scientifically, I absorb all of the information before I make any kind of opinion. I think skepticism is a big part of what drives the science. So, I'm not, against skepticism, but a lot of the things that people say about that video, I think, have been very easily uh, proven correct. Like you mentioned, obviously you see the muscle mass, but also there's like matted hair and just the suits of the time didn't look like that. And the gentleman who claims to have worn the suit wasn't involved in the making of the film. And to me, something that I think everybody kind of hinges on as far as hoaxing goes is these deathbed confessions and confessionals that people make. Uh, and to me, if I'm going to hoax, I'm going to let somebody else do all of the legwork. And then when no one else is around to take credit for it, then I will. And that's how I would do it. So to me, when I hear somebody even say that, hey, I was a guy in that suit and we filmed it, then I just I don't believe it. One of the gentlemen was still alive to refute it and say that that absolutely didn't happen. And so I don't know. That's just kind of my take. And this is our first like real solid Bigfoot episode. So I've been dying to get that off my chest. 'Cause that discussion for me, I think like hoaxing is almost a science in its own right. And I mean, it's something that, it sucks when you're in a community like this or somebody like yourself who has actually had multiple experiences in the environment with the Bigfoot. So you've seen it, you know what you saw, it's real. And so like, hoaxers kind of cause people to think that you're crazy, right? Uh, so it's a difficult thing to kind of navigate. But to me, yeah, I just that video I went off on a tangent because I've been just wanting to defend that video for weeks now. But there's nothing to this day. You have people walking around in ghillie suits, like you said, that even equates to what they provided on that 8 millimeter film. So that's where I stand on that. And I just don't see any scientific reason not to think wholeheartedly that Patty is a real Sasquatch.
It is. I mean, I saw one with my own two eyes. Number two, I was not even thinking about Bigfoot. That was the last thing on my mind. It didn't even cross my mind. I had no idea of what was going on. With the screams, the whoops, the tree knocks, the rock throwing. I had no idea of what was doing it until September 8th of 2011. That's when I saw it. And that changed my mind forever because it's something I'll never forget. it'll stick with me until the day I die. And I'm very privileged to have seen one because a lot of people don't get that. Uh, I think it was a gift, you know, that I got to see one, and it scared the crap out of me. But I mean, that's why I made my group, because people are standoffish, and there's some skepticism, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But when you ask those skeptics to go out in the woods with you, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to go and this and that. They always find an excuse, because if they see one, then they'll probably be like, running through the woods and trying to get out of there. But I've never ran into like a fierce Bigfoot, like throwing multiple rocks at you or anything like that. I think there might be some like that, just like a human being. Might be volatile, you know. Once you out of their area, they want to be left alone, and they'll do anything they have to do to get you out of there. And that's why that male showed itself to me, because he wanted me to leave, because that windmill farm was disrupting their environment. And he wanted me to leave, but he didn't know that I couldn't leave because I had to stay there. And,
Right.
but I'm 100% a firm believer due to seeing one. And people can believe me or they don't have to believe me. I know what I saw. I know it's in my heart. And I definitely saw what I saw. And it wasn't a bear. It was not a bear. Oh, and actually, PBS did an investigation up on Kirby Road where the substation was at. And it was a elderly lady, and she was at her sink. And I guess her son came by like a week beforehand and installed like motion lights, like for the back of her house. And Eric Altman did this investigation, and she was at her sink drinking a glass of water like at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then all of a sudden, all the lights pop on, and she hears this ruckus outside, and she's looking out the window, and she sees this thing. She sees a bear, and this bear is just like going at it with this other thing, and it's making the bear noise. And this, she said, this other thing grabs a hold of it and flings it, and then the bear comes after it again, and then this thing grabs it and flings it again. And I think it was a Bigfoot and a bear, just like Eric said, a Bigfoot and a bear, fight. And and I don't see any reason for this elderly lady to fib or lie.
Yeah, what would she have to gain from something like that?
Exactly. And Sean Dennis, he lived on that road, on Kirby Road, for a long time. I guess he grew up there, but he had a in-ground pool, and he had a like a pool house. And he said there's a lot of things that transpired up there too, like night swimming, and they'd hear
I'll have to
they'd
reach
hear
out to some of these people to get on the show.
yeah. They heard a cow up on a hill, and it didn't sound like a cow, but it was a cow. I would do call blasting in an area, and there's no houses around for miles. And then all of a sudden you hear a dog barking. And then you hear it, and it's like, that sounds like a dog, but is that a dog? It's just strange stuff.
Yeah. Well, we are hitting that hour mark where we usually like to kind of cut it off. And I know you're out there, trucking and doing everything that you got to do. So Before I let you go, let's just real briefly talk about the June 1st Squatch that we're going to go out and do, the overnight camp. In case anybody wasn't aware, Doug is coming with us. He's kind of going to show us, show us the ropes, kind of get us out there, try to get us into some uh, interactions, and we're going to stay the night. We've been advertising it, and since we have him on the show here finally, I just wanted to go ahead and bring that up real quick. And do you have anything that you wanted to say about it? Anything as far as promotion goes, or if there's somebody maybe on the fence who doesn't want to come out into the woods with somebody like myself and John, any assertion from Doug that we're going to be safe and not end up lost out in the middle of nowhere like I would end up being without a guide?
No, this is it's not really far. It's not a bad trek in. It really isn't. It's going to be on Route 31.
Oh, we lost him again. Is he coming back? Oh, we lost you there for a second. Route 31 was the last thing that we heard.
Yeah, Route 31 and Fire Tower Road. It's directly across from Fire Tower Road. If you're going towards Somerset, you hang like a left. It's like a Y on the road, and it's Northwoods parking lot, trailhead. So it's Northwoods trailhead, and that's where we're all going to meet on June 1st between like 10 and 11. And there's a couple people with disabilities, and there's a road past that, down the hill past the stone quarry on the left. It's called Tunnel Road, and you can make a left into Tunnel Road, and it takes you to the back way to the pavilions down there, and it's half the distance, not even half the distance to the pavilions. So that'll be June 1st between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning, and then we're going to stay until Sunday till noon or whatever, until everybody gets out of there, and then we're going to bring food. Everybody bring food, and there is, I think, 5 pavilions. I'm going to have extra tents, sleeping bags, but I think 5 pavilions can hold like 4 to 5 people. And if anybody needs a tent or an extra sleeping bag, I'll have some things with me. But I think it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I know we're looking forward to it, and obviously we have kind of our own reasoning too with trying to, bring some cameras out and make some content and everything. But I've never experienced anything like it, and I haven't been in the woods in a really long time. I gave up hunting when I was, I think, maybe 13 or 14 years old. I realized that there was a lot more money in butchering deer than hunting them. So I haven't even been out in the woods for a very long time, let alone had any type of experiences like the ones that you've had. So, that kid inside of me, I'm really excited to maybe hopefully have some kind of interaction. But I mean, regardless if Bigfoot decides to join us or not, I'm expecting it to be a lot of fun. So I implore anybody who is interested to come out. We're going to have a good time. I have been designing some merchandise. We have a merch store. So there's some t-shirts about the event. If anybody wants to buy that, essentially all that does is help fund it. We're going to try to rent some of these pavilions and get some equipment and things of that nature. So if also you get to, rep the gear when we're out there filming, I know I'm going to have, a hoodie or something with the design on it, but I digress. I'm just trying to be a salesman right now.
That's all right.
Yeah, I gotta start making some money here. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start advertising that. But yeah, absolutely, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. We have people traveling from out of state. We might even be lucky enough to have somebody come in from Vegas, which would be a huge get for us for this. He was a guest on a previous episode not too long ago, but we hit that hour mark, so I'm going to let you go. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences. It's something that we've been trying to line up for quite some time. And I'm honestly thankful that it took a little while for us to do this, because it gave us some time to interact in the meantime and kind of get to know each other a little better before we can, get the show together. So
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate you, Doug.
I appreciate you, Drew. I really do. And if anybody wants to, find out, more specifics of the camping with Bigfoot, just go to my group, Bigfoot Group Southwestern PA, on Facebook, and it's up in the featured section. And I'm noticing a lot of people coming out of the woodwork in the group now that are just telling the stories left and right, about their encounters and everything. And this group has really taken off due to these members. And if it wasn't for the members, it wouldn't be a group. And I thank them all for joining.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So again, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead. I made a new outro, but it's a little messed up, so I'm gonna hit the old one. So we're gonna be sitting here looking silly while we play this song here for a second, trying to get into a little less obtrusive things. But we'll play the old one tonight. And if we can just grab you just for 1 second after I'm done recording, just to make sure that all the audio and stuff is good, and then we'll let you go. But listeners, I appreciate you. Thanks for squatching. If you like the show, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for squatching.